Stage 6. Lesson 76. Suppose first. What do you suppose would happen if there were suddenly no water in the world?
I suppose we'd all die of thirst if there were suddenly no water in the world.
Supposing today were Sunday, where'd you be now?
Supposing today were Sunday, I'd be at home now.
Notice that after the verb suppose we use the subjunctive conditional tense because the sentence expresses a supposition, supposing today were. What tense do we use after the verb suppose?
We use the subjunctive conditional tense after the verb suppose.
Why?
Because the sentence expresses a supposition.
Hotter and hotter, more and more. Does it become hotter and hotter as we go towards the north of Europe?
No, it doesn't become hotter and hotter as we go towards the north of Europe, but it becomes colder and colder.
Do people usually become richer and richer as they become older?
Yes, people usually become richer and richer as they become older.
Why?
Because they usually earn more and more money.
Does good wine usually become cheaper and cheaper as it becomes older?
No, good wine doesn't usually become cheaper and cheaper as it becomes older, but it usually becomes more and more expensive.
Ready. How long does it take you to get ready to go out in the morning?
It takes me about half an hour to get ready to go out in the morning.
When do you think you'll be ready to take the exam at the end of this book?
I think I'll be ready to take the exam at the end of this book in about 4 weeks' time.
Are you always ready to lend people money?
Yes, I'm always ready to lend people money. Or, no, I'm not always ready to lend people money.
Also, as well, to, whereabouts. The words also, as well, and to all mean the same thing, but their place in a sentence is different. The word also usually goes between the subject and the verb, whilst the words as well and to usually go at the end of a sentence. Whereabouts in a sentence do the words also, as well, and to usually go?
The word also usually goes between the subject and the verb, whilst the words as well and to usually go at the end of a sentence.
Give me an example of each, please.
He also speaks French. He speaks French as well. He speaks French too.
Describe, description, just. Describe someone you know, please.
I'll describe my uncle. My uncle is tall and thin and quite old.
Describe the place where you live.
The place where I live is by the sea. It is quite large. There are some factories just outside it.
What's she doing?
She's describing the place where she lives.
Do you think it's a good enough description?
Yes, I think it's a good enough description. Or, no, I don't think it's a good enough description.
Whom? The word who is the subject of a verb, whilst for the object of a verb we use the word whom. For example, in the sentence, who is speaking to you, the word who is the subject of the sentence, whilst the word you is the object. In the sentence, to whom are you speaking, the word whom is the object, whilst the word you is the subject, that is, the person who is doing the action. What's the difference between the words who and whom?
The difference between the words who and whom is that the word who is the subject of a verb, whilst for the object of a verb we use the word whom.
Give me an example of each, please.
Who can speak Chinese here? And to whom are you giving the book?
The word whom is very little used in conversation. Instead of saying, to whom are you speaking, we nearly always say, who are you speaking to, because it is easier to say, although it is not really grammatically correct. What do we generally say instead of, to whom are you speaking?
We generally say, who are you speaking to, instead of, to whom are you speaking?
Why?
Because it's easier to say.
As soon as, over. What did you do as soon as you came into the classroom?
I sat down, etc., as soon as I came into the classroom.
What'll you do as soon as the lesson is over?
I'll stand up, go home, etc., as soon as the lesson is over.
When you lend anything, like money for example, do you prefer the other person to give it back on a certain date or just as soon as possible?
When I lend anything, like money, for example, I prefer the other person to give it back as soon as possible.
Strange. Who's the strangest person you know?
A friend of mine is the strangest person I know.